thank you so much for agreeing to doing a second part here, and so that we can talk more about your playing. Also, we had some questions that were sent in,
Cool.
that I have not warned you about ahead of time.
Good. Yes.
Yes. Because I'm trying to get as much of a as much shock value as I can out of this.
Where do you get your toenails clipped, Ray?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mind your own business.
Yes, mind your own business. I go to the little nail joint down the street, and they have the beautiful women there. They do a great job. All right, so
I hadn't thought of that. I may have to have a look at that now.
Yeah, my wife and daughter go to the nail. They go get pedicures, and they say that there's older gentlemen that go in there and they get their nails just cut, and they don't get their Well,
you're not getting near my nails, darling. I've been spending years making those right.
Yes, you know exactly how to do it. All right.
Yeah.
So one thing we didn't cover in the first part was we didn't get to talk much about your playing. So
that's true.
Yeah, it's like we spent so much time talking about your history, and so one of the questions, and this was actually one that was sent in by a reader, and let's see. Oh yes, so Callan Turner asked, how does Ray see the fretboard, as far as chords and scales? So when you're playing over, so let's talk about how you look at the fretboard and scales and chords and such.
Well, that's an interesting question, because it was I'm going to move this back just a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know about most players, but damn light coming in. E. Excuse me. And those are my channels. I go between those,
Right.
That's what I've always done. I mean, it's second nature now, so I don't actually follow my hands or anything, but that was always the way I went from, as I traveled up the neck. I knew, okay, we're in the 5th fret now, so I can do, now we're in the, that's the simplest way I could describe that. Okay. And that's how I had it.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you saw the different chord shapes around the neck for, let's say, an E chord. Yeah. And then when you were soloing, you would think about those chord tones, or what would you think about?
I don't anymore. But when I was first starting to play, and I can remember this, that was the easiest way to go from one to the next, and on up.
Right.
But it's not a conscious thought anymore, but that's how I started doing it, thinking about it.
Yeah. And then in your solos, because you're a very much a spur of the moment, kind of in the moment kind of player. So but would you tend to at times do any type of composed solos where you really thought about it or hummed it beforehand, or would you kind of play? So where is this coming from? Are you hearing something in your head? Are your hands just kind of muscle memory?
No.
What does it come from?
Well, as I've always said, I've got the allergies again. Excuse me. Can you believe this? Allergies both damn times. Excuse me.
It's okay.
No, it isn't.
Well, I wish you did. I have them too.
I just hate the allergies. I'm sorry. What was the question?
No, again, so when you're doing a spur of the moment solo, I mean, is that something maybe that you're singing in your head, or or something? So what is the solo coming from?
A nanosecond before I hit the first note, I have no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah, I
really don't. If we're in the key of A, let's say, my solo. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
So how can anybody else?
Yeah, how can anyone else? Let's talk about your bending. And it was like just in that last example, what kind of got you into bending lower strings? Because that wasn't such a real common thing, for a long time. I mean, who were you seeing that was bending the low strings in that kind of, like?
Yeah, well, nobody.
Yeah.
And if there's anybody out there, and I'm sure there is, I can't be the only person who's going and wobbling.
Yeah.
But I had to do it because, well, this is talking about that one piece. I did that in A. I wrote it. And in A, I mean, I can just about play it in A, but it's pretty hard. I just suddenly thought, well, how about... And I went, oh, okay, practice that, get the fingers up, and that's what. And then I changed it to D because it's a lot easier.
Yeah, but play it in D. Is
okay, make sure it's a real bastard. I'll be polite today.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah,
it's for the children.
Yeah, I check my swearing at the door. Okay, so it really is quite difficult. Whoops. Let me do it once right. So you can see and probably feel the frustration I'm going through.
Well, also it's so hard to do those low string bends that are in tune, especially while you're trying to
I know,
some of those where you're holding another bend.
That's the fun of it.
Yeah, the challenge.
Yeah, I can go, but when you do. Oops. And I've been doing that all my life, pulling the strings down forever.
Right.
These, I started to write something around this. The second part would be. Well, that wasn't supposed to be there. Oops. Whoops, that's wrong. Well, anyway, I haven't finished writing it yet, but
yeah,
it's all that bendy stuff, that somehow I can feel the tension on the string and know that 9 times out of 10 it's going to be in tune.
Yeah. And frankly, sometimes the hardest thing is to sit there by yourself with a guitar. It seems like when you have when it's a gig or even when in the studio, sometimes it's easier to get the bend right when there's other things going on. So
well, and also, please be aware, friends, that I'm playing through a little Fender amp with no reverb. It is bone dry,
right.
And when I'm recording, when I'm doing little overdubs with my Focusrite, I don't have any reverb. I've got the headphones on and it's bone dry, which is not necessarily the best way to play with headphones so close that dry. Yeah. But I'm so used to it now that I just get on with it. But anyway, that's that. It's it's an exercise for me to make sure I can hold those strings up. Oh, it came down a little bit. Yeah, last one was good.
You got it.
Well, it's just fun for me. Well, you could play that straight, but so what?
Yeah.
And then suddenly I went, oh, look, and then I had to work out which fingers, and now I've got calluses on my little finger, which I've never had before.
Right. From having to hold those and do bends on with the pinky.
Yeah. It's like a power 2 fingers, you know.
Yeah.
What do they call it? A power bend, did they, I think, in those days?
I don't know.
I got 4 fingers, look.
4 fingers,
go
I can do a
anywhere.
power bend.
Yeah.
It kind of attached, because you were talking about reverb, and also in the last, the first part, you talked about how you kind of went more and more away from using effects. Part of it as your amp, so was part of your focus on bending and these other things, kind of part of not spending so much time on effects, because so many modern players spend so much time focused on effects and controlling effects and changing sounds. And that's it's not to sound like the old guys, get off my lawn stuff, but it's a focus. It's an energy. It's like, so you can spend a bunch of energy learning how to work a bunch of boxes that are on a board in front of you, or you can work on some of these other things where you can add some different expressiveness to your playing. But I just sounded like the old guy. But anyway, go ahead.
No. I am the old guy, and I agree with you. Doing those bends, and I forgot where I was. I'm so sorry. I know you're going to have to edit the hell out.
We were talking about effects and spending time on string bending.
Oh, that's right. Well, first and foremost, I strongly believe that the only reason to use an effect is if the song calls for it.
Yeah.
And a classic example is when I did the Everlys. We may have mentioned this before. I won't remember.
Well, no, we haven't talked about the Everly Brothers. So so go ahead, and then we'll piggyback on that.
Yeah, because I think the song is "Dream," and you hit this big, and it's a tremolo.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of the song. So that's part of the song. I mean, there's no way you can just play that chord without the tremolo in there. It's going, what's he doing?
Yeah.
But that's a classic case. Of course, it was on the record, so you should play it. But I used to really enjoy the Roland chorus, JC 120, when I had one back in England. Yeah. And I couldn't turn the damn chorus off. I just kept going. George Harrison. Excuse me, one more second. Oh, there they are. I do apologize for this, everybody.
Yeah. So let's just talk about the Everlys for a moment. So how did how did you get the call to play with the Everly Brothers?
I don't know. Well, I do. I knew several people not in the band, but I don't know. I think their road manager called me, and I wasn't working at the time, so I went out and did it. And to be honest with you, and I've said this before, I mean, I'm a huge Everly Brothers fan. I mean, who isn't? Just beautiful, beautiful melodies and harmonies. But I would sooner listen to them than play that stuff. Because as Albert said, when I ran into Albert, who wasn't doing that one, I said, well, how you doing, mate? All right, He said, well, it's not much of a playing gig. and he was right. But we did 6 weeks. We opened up for the Beach Boys. They had all these California girls bouncing across the stage. No fun there.
None at all.
But I didn't really enjoy it that much because I didn't, as Albert said, it's not a playing gig where you can just, have fun. You have to follow the rules. Yeah. That said, it was great.
But, which is kind of a shame because it's like, wasn't Buddy Emmons on a lot of those gigs?
Emmons was on it. Larry London was on drums. Phil Cranham was on bass. Keyboard player was a guy who had a big hit in England called Number One with a Bullet. Huh. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Dave Wingfield. No, that's a baseball player. I can't think of his
Pete Wingfield? There was a
Pete Wingfield.
Yes.
Pete Wingfield. Absolutely. Yeah. It was. And it was funny because Emmons and London go back a long time, far as I could work out. And they were always giving each other grief on the time. Larry would be out there going, it sets here, buddy. don't be moving.
I'm setting the tempo.
Right. It said, this is where it lives. Okay.
Yeah.
They're just messing with each other. But,
right.
And Emmons would come flying back with something.
So were the Everlys just as great live hearing their voices? Was that enjoyable?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was not an unenjoyable gig. It just, I needed money, so I took the gig. I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't needed money, but that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Oh dear, look what I just done.
Yeah.
But this, it's a bit of a quandary there, because I love the Everly Brothers. Good grief, and Chet's playing on a bunch of that stuff too.
Yeah.
But I would sooner have gone out with Ry Cooder and Jim Keltner.
Well, who wouldn't? So
right. Well,
yeah.
I know, and it's a joke. I'm being facetious.
Absolutely.
But
so,
who wouldn't?
And so I guess we kind of got into this through effects, and so you had to get so did you have to get a tremolo pedal to play the gig?
For some reason I had one hanging around here. I don't even know what I ever used it for, if anything.
Huh.
I don't know. I had it here. I went, oh, well, that's all right. I'll take that out.
Yeah. So you just said, and then the question is, did you have it underfoot or on your amp, or where did you put it? Because I've never seen you have a pedal before. So
I don't want you to think about this, but I had a pedal on the floor, and I do apologize.
Oh my goodness, that's I have to take you off the pedestal.
No, woe is me, and the rest of you.
And the rest of you too.
It's funny. I did a demo session for my next door neighbor, 2 doors down. He's got a great studio with Pro Tools, and I'm always going over there, doing some overdubs for him. It's always great fun. Make a little cash and walk home next door. But we were over there, and he set up his camera and sort of recorded some of it. And I sent a little clip of it to a fan in Sweden. I don't know where I'm going with this. Man, you better keep me organized.
I'll keep you in line, Ray. I'll keep you in line.
Somebody needs to. I've never found anybody to do it yet, but you could be the first.
Well, for a limited time only. So what was on this video clip? Was it just you playing in the studio?
Well, I was in the studio. All you could hear was the guitar, and it was I was doing some of these. Or something like that. I found some more of those. Look.
Did that come?
They're everywhere.
Yeah, they are everywhere, and I play. I tried to play one like yours, and I did it backwards. So, but that's a whole nother thing.
Right, but that's your thing, and if it works for you and sounds okay, great. Yeah. I always had to do this. Oh. It's the only way I could get the gallop in there.
Right.
Because without the gallop, it just sounds
right.
Monotone.
So did you get some of that from Chet Atkins, like his galloping on guitar, that type of thing? Is that where maybe some of that came from?
No, as far as I can remember, I nicked this from Blackmore. Because there was now that was the thing. That's where I stole it. It was one of the songs on the Purple thing, and the lick went. Wherever it went, I can't remember. I'm having that. And I think Blackmore nicked it from Albert. Albert, we all steal from each other. That's the fun bit.
Yeah, and then you take it in your own direction. Let's get to some of these some of these questions that I have, and also it's tempting to ask about Blackmore, and especially you had mentioned that you interviewed Blackmore at one point. Tell me how that happened, and what was your takeaway from it? Because I'm sure you probably hadn't seen Blackmore in a long time. So no,
and we certainly, we were never friends. I mean, I just met him once at the first gig. I think when I said, how long you been playing, mate? When I was 14.
Right.
3 minutes was the reply.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But I was doing an interview with Bill Pyburn, who runs his own acoustic guitar magazine.
Right.
And my acoustic stuff had just come out, 2000 or where. Well, it didn't exactly come out, but we finished the project. Let's put it that way.
And that was word. That was
Songs Without Words.
Songs Without Words. Right.
And I stole that title from Felix Mendelssohn, who has many of these brilliant pieces called Songs Without Words. And I went, I'm having that as well. So, and he hasn't called yet to moan about it. So I guess we're okay.
I think you're okay. So how did you end up interviewing Ritchie?
Well, I sat down with Bill in a pub, and we had a couple of beers, and he was asking me, how did I get started? What was this? Who were my influences? I said, well, apart from my local town hero, who was really my first influence, then Big Jim Sullivan, then Blackmore came along, I went, oof, okay. And when I said that to Bill, he said, well, I'm supposed to interview him for an upcoming album, acoustic thing he's doing. He said, why don't you do it? You know all about it. I said, all right, I will. And that was that. And so I did. And his manager called and kept saying, now, please keep it current. Please keep it current.
Right.
Well, that's not going to work, darling. I want to know all the dirt on when I was a teenager.
Yeah. So
I was asking all these questions about, because his old nickname was Bluebell. They all had these strange names back then. I'm still 13, 14. I don't know what's going on. And I would ask him, I said, where did the name Bluebell come from? He said, well, that was the thing that the drummer, brilliant drummer called, can't think of his name.
The Deep Purple
This was in the Screaming Lord Sutch bands, when they were doing that. And I never did see that. But the drummer gave everybody names in the band, apparently. But, it wasn't very important to him, but it's just stuff that I remembered. Everyone would call him Bluebell, or Bluebell's coming to town. Yeah. Kind of. So, I just, that's right, his manager called, Keep It Current, which I didn't. So he called and we were on the phone and I just recorded on a cassette, on a cassette. And we were there for about an hour and a half, I think, just chatting. And there was so many questions I forgot to ask him after the event. Hey, can I call back quickly? No. But it was very interesting. It's odd. I didn't hear much humor in his voice. I know I'm pretty damn silly and I'm quite like that, quite frankly. I don't have a problem with it. But I remember one thing he said, because we both knew Jim Sullivan, and Jim had been saying to Blackmore, Blackmore said, I thought I knew your name. Sullivan was always going on about you. Well, double compliment there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he just, I just asked him as many questions. And one question I said to him, I said, there was a song called Bird Has Flown, and the riff goes like this. Oops. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. So I said to him, now look, Ritchie, that's where that riff came from. And he went, nobody told me. But I never knew whether he was like winding me up, as I should say, politely. But it was good fun, It wasn't like you and I, we can giggle and chuckle. There was no.
He was too serious. Yeah.
Well, it's just, I don't know him, so, I can't just come out with silliness, But it was good fun. I enjoyed it, Somewhere I got the cassette still knocking around.
This brings up a interesting, question from Tim Lurch, who's a great jazz telly player.
Who?
And
Tim who?
Tim Lurch, and great, like solo jazz, telly guy, and he wrote, he said, how difficult was it for an Englishman with strong opinions to get along with the good old boy network in Nashville?
Does the phrase KMA mean anything?
You're going to have to translate.
No,
Yes.
Well, go on.
No, you don't need to translate it. Kidding.
No,
Yes.
I wouldn't dream it. No, that's an interesting question. Yeah, strong opinions, absolutely. But I got on with those guys, I mean, as I said in the last one, I think, I can't remember who it was, but they all used to jokingly say, get that guy who talks funny, plays the telly.
Yeah.
Not in that accent,
Right.
No, I got on with most of those people, I believe, but there's no telling. Because I'm not afraid to say boo to a goose, I must say.
Yeah.
Oh, political correctness there. You won't be able to say boo to a goose soon,
No, there's a lot of things we won't be able to.
No. Animal cruelty. PETA on their way up my driveway.
Yes, they're on their way now. They're coming out of your mailbox.
Yeah, okay. There they are.
Yes.
Well, you're going to have to wait.
Yeah. So here's another question that was written in from the good readers, the good watchers, I should say. So Johnny Isaacs, who's a chap that lives here in town, works down at Nashville Used Music. He said, does Ray regret selling his old telly, or are guitars just tools to him?
Oh, no, I do regret selling it. I was broke. I was, really broke. And I was offered a really, really good price for it, because it had played on a bunch of records.
Yeah.
But I wasn't playing that much, and it didn't really bother. I know where it is. I can get it back if I want anytime. I know where my Gibson amp is. I can get that back if I want. But, excuse me. No, they're not just tools. They're not just. No, I was very attached to that guitar, and I'm not sure whether I would have sold it to somebody I didn't know. Now I think about it, I'm not sure, because I did want to know where it went. It was like my birds we spoke about, the parrots. I think, didn't we, last time?
Yeah.
Or did we? I don't know. Yeah. And I wanted to make sure they were going to a good home, But I don't know. I do. I could get it back if I wanted, but I'm not playing that much these days to warrant paying him what he's probably going to ask me for to get, But
yeah. So I guess that kind of answers the question. And yet you would have a connection with certain instruments, because there's certain instruments that you connect with that that are magic when you pick them up and you feel like, oh, I feel at home on this guitar. And others that don't.
That's right. As I said, when I bought it, I just bought it acoustically, and it sang like a bird. And I went, that's the end of that. And then doctored it up a bit, but just the tone of it. And it was a rosewood neck, which I like. I'm not particularly what do you call these?
Maple.
A maple neck. Yeah, I was going to say blonde.
Yeah.
It was a great guitar. I mean, I'd have it back in a heartbeat. Perhaps you'll give it back to me.
Yeah. Also,
I think the main point of that is, Zach, is that I don't need it anymore, and he's enjoying the guitar.
Right.
So then I made some money that I needed at the time. Everybody was happy.
Yeah. There's another guitar that you were photographed with, and actually another. Let's see. Yes, Daryl now owns the GNL Broadcaster that you used to have.
I remember meeting him.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about that guitar. So did Leo give you that, or who gave you that from GNL?
I'll tell you the whole story about that. Yeah. And the reason why it only sat on the stand when I did the Starlix video, because I had an endorsement with them, with GNL. I was flying out to LA to do that, the Starlix, and I called him up and said, "Would you mind having get somebody to send one of those guitars over there for me? Save me dragging it from Nashville. And they went, what? Why? What, you know? So anyway, they didn't supply it. Well, I guess they did supply the guitar in the end, but they made such a damn fuss about it, you know, that I lost all interest in the guitar and the company, and swiftly sold it. Unnecessary. You know, if you have an endorsement, let's say an amp endorsement, I don't want to drag an amp from here to LA. People have amps, but they bitched and moaned about it, you know, to the point where I went, oh, no, sorry, bye-bye.
So the instrument that was in the video was not the one that you had back in Nashville, or was it the same?
Do you know, I don't think so, because I didn't take mine out there. Okay. So I believe you're right. Yeah, that was... Well, it's just that they made so much fuss about it. I didn't play it. You know, I was a bit teed off at this point. I'm just not going to play it. I'll just leave it there.
Well, how did the relation? I mean, I'm guessing the relation started off a little better than that. I guess they approached you about an endorsement, and
the details I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know who I was talking to. But anyway, when that happened, I lost interest.
Yeah.
And I remember, what was the guy's name?
His name is Daryl. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah,
Altamont. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I remember meeting him at one of the vintage guitar shows here.
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he bought that guitar that day from me.
Okay.
Or was it?
I think he bought it from Grun, but it might have gone through a couple different hands. So who knows? But he's the one who owns the guitar currently.
Well, okay, then it must have been when we were at that vintage thing. He must have had it with him or something.
Okay.
I think I signed it. I'm really not sure. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do that on camera.
Yeah, excuse me. Pull yourself off to the side.
Okay. So that led the guy before, the note before, thinks I'm opinionated.
So
no, I hope I answered his question, but
yeah.
Okay.
Was it a good guitar?
Which one?
The GNL Broadcaster.
Oh, I didn't play it that much. I think probably, it was an endorsement. I already had my telly. That would have been a second guitar. Why I even signed up, I don't know. It's been so long now, but when they made such a fuss about supplying endorsees with equipment to save them traveling around the country with the damn thing, that was. I'd never heard of that before. Yeah. So anyway,
so let's. So this was another. Adam Nixon asked about what are some memories of working with Martin Parker, the drummer.
In my autobiography, which is finished but not edited and certainly not in print, there's one line in there where I say, if there's one person I'd like to see walk up my driveway right now in his big old overalls, it would be Martin Parker.
Yeah.
I love Martin to death. He was a wonderful guy. And we worked on a lot of sessions together and various things. I mean, he used to call me the tea bag. And I'll leave the silence there because you may remember Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've interrupted myself again. You've got some editing to do here, Zach.
Yeah, so Martin Parker, of course, probably most famous for playing. I guess he played with Skaggs after you did.
Yeah.
He also played with Vince Gill and Patty Loveless, and fantastic drummer.
Oh, great! But he was just that good. I mean, he played drums just like he looked. He was that good old boy,
Yeah.
Just, I loved it. It's funny you would ask that question because that's in the book.
Yeah.
So he was a great guy. Sadly missed.
Tell us about getting to know Carl Perkins.
Well, a drinking pal of mine, a running mate of mine, also English over here at the time, he started managing Carl. excuse me. And so, eventually I got to meet Carl, and Carl had heard of me because of the Skag stuff and everything. I'd certainly heard of him. So we, two guitar players having a chat, and we got to know each other a little bit. And it was probably after we got to know each other a little bit, he sort of came over one day and said, Ray, I can help you with get you one of the Apollo Hair Systems endorsement, if you like. After I got up, I think he was actually being serious the first time. And I said, no, look, I've got party hat made out of skin. I don't need no hair up there no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, it lapsed into a bit of Yankee there, or Southern, I should say. Oops, sorry. But anyway, Carl was great. And this, every time we were in the same room, he would go, don't forget the endorsement.
Yeah.
Don't forget that skin. It went back and forth. And he was such a wonderful person. He and his wife. It was a funny name. Valda. Both wonderful people. I think it's Valda. Both wonderful people. Yeah. And he and I giggled and chuckled a lot, both being guitar players. But what a wonderful man. And I actually, he rode me up. We were doing a TV show in California when I was with Marty. So this is much later on. I'd obviously stayed in touch. And he was there, and he got me to jump up with him, and we played a little bit on whatever this show was. It was a cast of thousands, I remember that. But that was fun, Carl's doing his thing, and I'm doing mine, and we're grinning away at each other. Does that thing spin around then, Carl? Yeah. Does it spin at all? Like your bow tie?
He was serious about his hairpiece. He didn't, Yeah. I'm sure he could joke about it, but yeah, he was not going to be seen without it.
Oh no! I got it. No, that's fine. To each his own. But you're not about to get one of those things on my head, thank you.
Yeah.
I got too many rascally mates who are just going to pull that off. Oh, look what Flacke's got. Whoa!
That's right. Unless you get it glued on like a pelt, which many people do.
He was great fun to be around. Great fun.
Yeah.
That's about it on Carl.
Yeah.
Great fun.
You did the Starlix video, and then of course many years later, quite a few years later, you did the Homespun video with Happy, and and it was nice in that he interviewed you during the video, and he asked lots of good questions and clarifying questions, which was kind of a godsend to us the watchers.
Well, listen. If it was a godsend to you, it was an even bigger. Why am I using that word? I'm not a religious man. It was a godsend from somebody else. So,
yeah.
And he, take me back. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've forgotten where we were.
What Happy Trom was interviewing you and how it helped in the video.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, so we sit down and I had a band there. It was Larry Nectar was on piano, Martin Parker was on drums, and Mike Leach from the
Memphis Boys.
From the Memphis Boys and Reggie and all that lot. He was on bass. He became a good friend of mine. In fact, he called me up once and said, "Hey, Ray, I've got a new girlfriend. Can you suggest a nice restaurant to take her?" I mean, why would he call me about that? I don't know, but I was flattered. I think I sent him off to the Airborne out by the airport, that restaurant out there. Oh, it doesn't matter. We're not going there anyway, are we?
Yeah, yeah.
But
so Happy, so it was helpful to you also having Happy ask you questions during the
it was more than that. I keep drifting, and I apologize.
Yeah,
it was way more than that, because when we'd finished all the tracks, Happy said, "Well, now, just tell us what's going on there." And I went, "Well, I'm playing," or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
And that was about all I had to say. So Happy said to me, he said, "I see. you're like Dr. John. I'm going to have to ask you all the questions to draw it out of you. And I said, yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Draw it out of me.
Yeah, please. I mean, answering questions is fun and easy, even if you don't know the answer.
Yeah.
But no, that really was because I didn't know what to do about it. I'm not a teacher or a professional at that stuff. I show, I don't teach. So anyway, it was great that he asked me the questions, and now Dr. John and I are really good pals. Yeah. This is Dr. John, and this is me.
This is you. So another interesting thing about that video is the fact that during that time period, your 68 Telly was stolen.
Yeah.
And I think you had just gotten it back for the video, perhaps, but it wasn't in playing shape.
I hadn't.
Yeah. Okay,
no, in fact, that was a Telly Glazer lent me, and Glazer said, "Here, this will work." He said, "I know what you like," and he was right. I didn't even need to touch it.
Yeah.
So that was the one I was playing on that video. But yeah, it was.
Tell us about the guitar getting stolen and getting it back, because I mean that hardly ever happens. The stories of a guitar. Because most of the time it's just the guitar gets stolen. But how did it get nicked and then returned to you?
Well, a friend of mine had just come to town, and he was staying in a hotel. I lived in Goodlettsville at the time. And he, excuse me again, sorry. I'm so sorry about this, everybody.
Oh, you're good.
If you lived in this town, you'd be sympathetic. Ooh, allergies. So all right, where was I?
You were living in Goodlettsville and telling the story of how the guitar got stolen.
That's right. So this guy called me up, and he was staying in a hotel, and I knew him and his brother from DC. His brother was a guitar player, and he was a bass player. So he called and said, "Oh, we'll get together." I said, "Oh, I'm just going in to play some racquetball." And I went out to start the car and it wouldn't start. So I needed a jump. And he very kindly came over and jumped the car. And I already had the keys in there. And I went, "Well, I don't want to turn the keys. I'm only going into town for a couple of hours to play and I'll be back." In that time period, I came back and my dog was inside instead of out where I left her. And I shouldn't have walked in there, but I did. And the telly was gone. A pair of beautiful handmade boots. I had $500. These like kangaroo skin or whatever, just called. Marty's Bootmaker.
Right.
Wonderful boots. They were gone. A boombox. Who cares? An expensive camera, but I'm not really a cameraman. But the guitar was the main thing, And then, before I lose my place, he it's kind of confusing now. A good friend of mine up in Kentucky, I was just talking to him on Messenger. Randy Hayes. Do you know Randy Hayes?
I don't.
Okay. Guitar player. Used to play with Keith Whitley.
Oh.
And, oh, man, how I can drift. I'm trying to think of why I'm bringing Randy into the thing now.
Because he must have had something to do with getting the guitar back.
Oh, that's right. He was the one who told me that he was working at Glazer's Corner Music at the time.
Right. And at the time, Glazer was coming into Corner Music a couple times a week.
Glazer had his little workshop there in the back, I think.
I remember that.
So this guy walks in and apparently Randy said, it's all a bit confusing to me and muddled, and I really don't know the whole true story, but he went back and this guy took the guitar in and then Randy took it back to Joe, and Joe went, "Oh, yeah." So Joe called me and he said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Yeah, you got my guitar, haven't you?" He said, "Yeah." Pretty weird. And the guy who found it, or some guy in this chain of events, told me that when he bought it from a pawn shop and said when he bought it, it was covered in mud and smelled of rotting flesh.
Ugh.
Oh, I'm looking forward to getting that back.
Yeah.
But that was his description of it. And when I got it back, minus the strap, which I'd had for years, and it was given to me, but not at the time. He ended up playing bass for AC/DC, Cliff. But he gave me this strap, and I just turned it inside out so you could slip, you know. Am I drifting again?
No,
Am I drifting again?
So, but what a miracle to get that guitar back.
I know, you know, it was amazing. And as I remember, you know, there was Joe. I don't know if I should go down this road. This gets a little financial, and it's Joe may not want. I don't care about the guy who Joe. Okay, Joe thought there was a reward out for it, and Joe gave this guy a reward. And I know his name, and I'm not going to tell him, but yeah. he tried to, you know, screw people over their work tools. You know, I won't mention his name, but anyway, so it was all rather confusing.
Yeah.
But eventually I get it back, and off we go.
Yeah.
But lucky me.
Yes, very lucky you. Tell me about how songs without, you know, we kind of touched on songs without words, but that was, you know, how did that come about? Well, I have a real, like a lot of players, I have a real love for classical music. And, you know, I was talking to somebody else today about this. You know, I just let classical music wash all over me because it's, you know, I don't read music and it's way over my head, but I understand light and shade and melody and timing and phrasing and this. And now and again, I'll sit down and work out this lovely little, where, you know, these classical parts where they go, you know, the spacing is just ridiculous. And I'll sit down and learn a couple of those things now and again. But basically, just washing over me. And I started to write all these acoustic pieces, you know, and I always called it innocently, or insolently, I should say, my version of classical music. You know, I mean, it wasn't classical, but it's about the best I could get it. And, you know, I still love classical. You know, things like, you know, and that's going to go on the end of that. So that, you know, something like that is very classical sounding to me. Oh, whoops, sorry. Minus the errant.
Whoops, that was supposed to be a D.
Yes.
Go on.
And so that was cut just using acoustic guitar. And,
yeah. I did that at a friend of mine's studio, and he just set the studio up, and he was learning Pro Tools. So that was kind of fun. Yeah. You know, Chip Woody. Thank you, Chip. And yeah, I didn't know what I'm doing. I'm just sitting in there playing these tunes. And eventually, but you know, we got all the parts and the data and everything. And I took everything over to my friend Brendan Harkin. Do you know Brendan? Over at what's the studio? I can't think of anything these days. It's really a pain. But I took it to Brendan's studio there, and he's the guy who mixed the Paganini thing too.
Right. Yeah. That's our next topic.
Yeah. No, it isn't. It's now.
Okay, it's now. No. It's now. So yes. So what kind of again, no hair, but where the harebrained idea of playing of learning Paganini? Sorry, that was lame, but I did it anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
Where the idea to do the Paganini thing? Are we out there already? Okay. Had we finished the last little bit about?
Well, finish talking about songs without words then.
Oh, okay. So I wrote all the pieces, and one of them is really classical. I think it's whoops. Nope, that's not right. Anyway, it's really involved, but I had this section in the middle. Oops. I tried to do that. But then I could make it work. Now I can't. But it's, you know. And that's classical to me. I mean, if I were to hear that in a string quartet, I go, who's that? Who wrote that then? So, anyway, I love classical music, and that's how it came about. And there's all sorts of nice. I played my own version of Tahitian Skies on there. That was great fun. I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, Paganini.
Yes.
Well, the Paganini thing. Let me play you what little I remember. Well, the intro was. Except that I went. I had all the open. Yeah, I know. I'm confused too.
You had to bring in those open string licks just because you could. Because Chet would have.
Right. The funny thing is that I learned the whole damn thing. I spent about 4 months learning this parrot fashion into MIDI. Put a violin on the MIDI so it wasn't so painful to hear that MIDI row. And I would just go over section by section. But that was the intro. I haven't played this in so long. Okay, so there's that. And then the verse is... And that's where I grind to a halt. It's something I should have played every day, because you've heard the thing, you know. And at my tempo, that was about as fast as I could get it. And I never once played the whole thing through without a mistake. I mean, it's so involved.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all this. Oh, it's just amazing. But I had so much fun doing it. And it was really a labor of love. I just wanted to know what he was doing. And when you listen to, you know, it played at the regular speed, it's like, there's no way you can hear the notes. And I don't read music to sit down and learn it. So I just did it parrot fashion. But what I did enjoy was that because I got a pretty good stretch, I could get, instead of going, whatever it is. I always like doing that if I can. Yeah, we'll see. There you go. So that proves that I did learn it, though.
Yes, you do. Yeah, you learned the pieces and you put them together. And
honest.
It is, and that's such a hard piece. Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine taking the little segments and learning it and recording it. And then,
Well, and there's one beautiful piece. I don't know if I can't remember it. But in fact, I took that little piece that I can't remember and I put it into Audacity and I turned it around. I mean, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And I learned that. And from that piece of music, when I turned it around, I wrote a piece for Jim Sullivan. That's on YouTube. I can't think what I called it. Okay, anyway, but it was really difficult to learn. But I was doing it at my own pace, and I wanted to see what was going on. I mean, Baylor. There's another tune of Paganini's called Moto Perpetuo, Perpetual Motion, and Baylor plays that at the same speed as the violin players.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't even know he played classical music. It just knocked me out. Put me in my place, my little Paganini bash. But it was great fun. I really enjoyed it. And then I took that again. I recorded that here on Cubase. And the only reason I had Cubase in there is that my friend in England, who actually showed me how to get make a computer work from ground zero, you know. So, hey, wait a minute, what's this paste and copy thing? I keep going back, and I remember the link, but I'm trying to remember. You know, everyone's laughing. Tony's laughing at me. But in essence, he helped me through the process technically. And by the time I had it all down in parts, I took it over to Brendan. And somewhere here, I have the microphone I recorded that on. It's a $10 LabTech mic.
It sounded great.
It sounded unbelievable. Well, the D60 Guild had a lot to do with that. But so I take it over to Brendan, you know, no reverb, just he pulled out a few string scratches. We sort of messed around with the arrangement. But I took it over and he said, I said, yeah, I just recorded it. He said, what do you record it? I said, I got a little $10 LabTech mic. And he went, I've got mics downstairs that cost me $5,000. You know, I mean, he's a serious engineer. And he said, you come in here with
your $10
sounding like all full and rich and big. And he didn't have to do anything to it. You know, a little reverb. But hats off to Tony for that, because he got me technically up and running on that. But great fun.
Yeah. In your autobiography that's as yet to be, you know, printed, you said it still needs to be edited. You wrote a bit about Roy Nichols, both about his. Tell us a bit about his influence, and then you know, kind of getting to know him a little bit later on in his life.
Yeah, it's a bit hazy actually, but I'm not even sure that we ever met. I think so. I maybe a Haggard gig when I was with Scares, but I honestly don't remember, which is dreadful. But anyway, we spent a lot of time on the phone. You know, I called him on his birthday and things like that. And this was really sad. So if I start to cry, stop the tape.
Okay.
No, let me get the crying over. Yeah. So I'm talking to him on the phone, and they're over at I can't think of the studio. They're cutting the album where Reggie played those 3 guitar solos. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that's the way love goes.
Right, and he used three solos, and he used 3 different guitars in there. Well, I called over there to talk to Roy, who's not playing on the album, you know. And he sounded, you know, I did it, brought tears to my eyes. He said, man, he said, I can't play, you know, nothing like that. He said, I'm leaving that to you, mate. You know, he was so complimentary, and I felt so sad. He sounded so down, and, you know, the real shit. But anyway, I called him on his birthday once, and I think what didn't happen was when I was with Marty, we used to, I don't think I'll be able to play this, but I'll play it slowly. Yeah. That's all over a 12 bar. Oh, whoops. And so on. And we used to walk Marty on with that, you know, really fast. And we were going to play Bakersfield, which is where Roy lived. And so I called him up and said, hey, I didn't tell him we played that tune, you know.
Yeah.
I said, look, we're doing a gig in Bakersfield. Would you please come? Please, mister, please.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yeah, I'll try and make that. I will. I said, no, don't try, please. Because I really wanted to do that for him, you know, when I could play it properly. And at the end of every gig, Dave DeRocha, the drummer, just kept speeding it up, laughing his butt off back there. Yeah. I haven't forgotten that, DeRocha.
Yeah.
There's a price to pay.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite Roy Nichols tracks, or, you know, tunes, either, you know, Haggard tunes or instrumental tunes, or?
Well, when I first really heard him, I heard the instrumental album that the Strangers did.
Right.
And there's one. I did work this out, and it was. I can't remember the tune.
Yeah.
And some of those in there, those weren't they. But it was just his tone. His tone was just in your face. You could tell this, I don't know if he had high action. I don't think we ever spoke about it. Funny the questions you don't ask, isn't it? Too late. But he look, between Blackmore and him, I mean, and that's why I wrote that tune, Templar Treasure. I don't know if you've ever heard that, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was the one. That was the one you did for the Louis.
Yeah.
The Nashville guitars.
Nashville guitars. That's his lick. There you go. Oh. I can't even remember the damn thing now. Oh, it's just.
But that was under the influence of both Ritchie and Roy Nichols.
Well, both of them.
Yeah.
There's some stuff. Have you ever heard "Stranger in Us All" by Rainbow, the last Rainbow album?
No, I haven't.
Unbelievable. Really, the quality, the playing, the tone of everything. Well, there's a tune on there where Blackmore's doing that. Yeah. So I went, well, let me write this piece, and I'll pay homage to Roy and Blackmore in one fell swoop. And so I did. But I've drifted again.
Great tuning and great players, and you're right. Roy had one of the best teletones ever, and somehow he was able to get such a fat bridge pickup sound on a telly that he could
I know. I never asked him about his strings or anything. I don't know why. Silly, but and he had these little Django nuances.
Yes.
Just, he thought, he's going to go for 4 or 5 Django notes, and he just maybe hit 2. You knew it had that feel of Django's playing. Just beautiful, I thought.
Yeah.
But my favorite telly player, without a doubt. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
And he should be yours.
Yeah, I have those Stranger instrumental albums and the live albums.
I was talking to the public, Zach.
Oh, okay. Well, I agree 100%. Yeah, they need to get those. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's an old line of Chet's there. That's why I said that. Chet would say things like, "Well, that's my opinion, and it should be yours." Well, that wasn't bad.
That sounds like a vaudeville thing.
Yeah. Well, Chet used to say, he had all these lines, and Richard Smith, guitar player. Yeah. Well, Richard. Oh, we should talk about that. The 17 guitar players on one track in a minute.
Yes. We can do that'll be next.
Okay. All right. Now get me back to where I was.
You were talking about Chet and Richard Smith, and you were talking about Chet kind of having a bunch of kind of sayings that he had.
Yeah, he had all these. So Richard can do Chet's voice brilliantly. And right at the end of this piece, which was called Slightly Above Below Average, which is one of Chet's phrases, and the phrase came from, I think it was Bill Pybo was there, and John McClellan, various people. I wasn't there, but Chet was on the floor recording some stuff. It must have been years ago. And Chet looked up and said, "Well, what do you think, boys?" And nobody would say anything. And he went, "Oh, I see, just a little above below average." Huh? So that's what we called the tune. And right at the end, Richard just goes, "Oh, that's my opinion, and it should be yours." And you couldn't tell the difference, as you can with mine. But but that was fun. And that track, if I'm not getting ahead of you, that track, I remember John came round here. He said, we'd already done galloping guitars for the album project. And John had done tracks with Vince and various other people. So he came around one day and he said, we need to write something so people can jam on it a little bit, And I can't remember what I played now, but John played his first section, which was in A. Mine was in G. And I remember it had a diminished thing. Does that sound diminished to you? Well, then you need help. No, I can't remember the lick, but it was a cool lick, and it was the first thing that fell out off my fingers, which is I find that still to this day amazing. You pick it up and go, and that stays with the song. Usually the better the song, the easier that is, of course. But yeah, it was. I forgot where I was.
Yeah, you're talking about the 17 guitar players and playing the Chet.
Well, that's right. Yeah, and that was I can't remember what I played or John, but it's a great little track. Charlie McCoy's on it, Brent's on it, Johnny Hyland. There's a whole slew of players, and John did his bit, whatever it was. And so it was just A sections, B sections. And Jerry Donahue flew his in from England, as did Mark Knopfler. It was great. It was a great project to do. And once we had all the parts done, we just copied and pasted, But that was good fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. You use the different sound, on a normal 2 pickup Telecaster, you use those all 3 sounds, well. A lot of guys kind of tend to focus on just one, usually the bridge pickup, but you kind of really thought about those different sounds and used them depending on the tune.
There's only one tune that I can remember where I used the middle, both pickups.
Yeah.
And that was a Skaggs record. I can't remember what it was called. But I'm either on, low or back here.
So I guess I should correct myself in that you tend to play either the bridge pickup or the neck pickup.
Well, I don't mean to contradict you there.
No.
But, I can't remember the last. I never use it now. It's either back or front. I like to play soft, sweet stuff. Who said that was sweet? That kind of. But it's just a matter of what the vehicle, what song you're playing, really.
Yeah.
But here's the tone in the middle. It's thin without any body.
Yeah.
And this is thin with body. And this is just different. Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, did you actually get a baby powder endorsement?
No, but I tried.
Because you mentioned before you put the baby powder on the neck of the guitar, and
right.
Yeah.
Well, I sent off to Johnson & Johnson. More tongue in cheek than anything.
Yeah.
What am I expecting? A big case of baby powder.
Yeah.
And I believe I sent one to the super glue people, just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
I could afford glue and baby powder. No, but the Johnson and Johnson people wrote back paraphrasing that. No, I don't think we really want to get into anything to do with music. Thank you. Something like that. Some stuffy old. Oh, okay. But
all right. Well,
hey, I've got another little. Oh, you got another question?
No. Go ahead. Play.
I should say I've been messing around with this.
Make sure we can see what you're doing. Make sure we can see your hand. So if you have to move a touch over, yeah.
Well, it's basically on the right hand. It's going. That thumps all the way through it. Well, not all the way through, but
yeah.
A little bit. So it's just an E. Whoops. And that's all I've got of that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of
great.
fun.
Those are great open string licks. Yeah.
Yeah, I just. Was a sensitive tuning guitar. Anyway, you see, and that I remember using that on a little lick in the Starlings. And I stole that lick from Roy, Irish guy, Rory
Gallagher?
Rory Gallagher. Oh, Rory. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Rory Gallagher, yeah. He had that. It was an A, I think. I don't know if he was doing that at the bottom, to be honest. I think, but.
All right. Well, here comes the part where we've been going for an hour and a half. So we probably ought to bring it to an end. But we'll edit this part out. But I just want to make sure. Was there anything that you were like, we've got to talk about such and such? I mean, because I think of course we did. We had part one, and then this looking at I didn't cover everything that you had made notes on, but also that covers a lot of the stuff that's in your autobiography that you're going to put out. So
I can't remember what's on the list now that I sent you.
I mean, we covered 90% of those things. So I feel like, I feel like we're at a good point, unless there's something that you're just adamant that you wanted to make sure got in there.
There are just two more licks I was going to share.
Okay, sure. Let's show the licks.
And this one, it's well, I'll just play it. This was at the end of an instrumental I had. Sorry. Let me do that again. You can't see that, can you?
You can't see it. Exactly. You can see the whole first part. So just play the ending part where you're doing the bass note and then the bend behind the nut, so we can see that.
So okay, hit the harmonics.
So if I'm seeing correctly, you're hitting that low, the licks in G, and you're hitting that low G note on the E, and then you're bending up like that.
Well, it's actually in D.
Okay, you're hitting the F sharp note. Okay.
Yeah, it's the whole thing was in D.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah.
It's just stuff. I'm just having fun.
Yeah, but you hit that F sharp note on the low E string, and then which string were you bending up?
I'm sorry, the G string.
Okay, so you're okay. Yeah.
So we're still in D.
Yeah.
I may not be perfectly in tune here, but anyway, that's the.
Yeah. But because you're hitting the harmonic, it's another note, and then you're pulling it up. Okay.
So the G is the harmonic G is still ringing, so you can get that. There's your third.
Yeah.
I usually use the little finger. I don't know why I don't there. Anyway.
Yeah.
And the other, if we're done with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we are. And there's this thing, you know. Augmented. And the other thing I wanted to share was, this is a really good pre-bend exercise, I think. Whoa, pitch. Wherever you go, but. And you know, I started with the little finger, and I already have that note pushed up. Actually, I don't. I go, oh, yeah. As you come down on that one to that note. Make sense?
Yes.
And it's just that independence of being able to bend something up while you're already working on something else. I actually worked the harmony up for that, and I can't play them both together, so don't ask. See, the fingering is different there. What I need to do is do it like this, which is even harder. Anyway, those just, you know, if you're into pre-bends, it's a good little exercise, because if you're into pre-bends, they've got to be in tune. And as I say, I always feel that, you know, with some of the tension, you know, it's never 100%, but usually in the tension, 9 times out of 10, you're in tune. Anyway, that's. And that's it. I can't think of anything else. Oh, I did write this lick. I saw some kid playing this once. He went, no. Oh, I know. Somewhere else we were in tune. And he looked at me, he said, what do you think of that then? I said, well, you're not playing it correctly. And when I played it to him, you know, with the 5 underneath, why they call it fourth? Well, I guess it's because it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. But to me, it's a 5 underneath. He was doing it. It's much more mysterious.
Yeah, because of the closer interval. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds darker, you know. And doesn't surprise me that Blackmore jumped on that. He got that voicing apparently from a Hammond keyboard player in England called Graham Bond.
Okay, yeah, from the Graham
may
Bond
have heard
organization.
I never saw him play, but apparently he was a very dark lad into the dark arts and witchcraft. Apparently, I don't know. I never met it, but that's certainly. That's scary stuff.
So, so were you joking about the dark arts, or was that really something
No.
that was no, it was
Apparently
really
he
something
was.
he was into that. And so that was something that musically that he felt, communicated that in some way.
I guess I have no idea, but apparently Blackmore, I read somewhere that Blackmore said, he really liked those dark voicings that Graham Bond was coming up with,
Yeah.
But, yeah. So much stuff to talk about. We can just keep going for hours.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Ray,
It's time for a glass of wine.
it is. It's time for a glass of wine, and it's time to let the kids out and all those things. So, Ray, thank you so much for doing a part 2 interview. So we
my
could,
pleasure.
Cover some questions from the peanut gallery and also just cover some of your other eras of work, and then especially getting to talk a little bit more about your playing and do the string bending and those pre-bends and all that stuff. And thank you so much for doing this, Ray. It's
my pleasure. Anytime.
A real treat. So
any time for any of you. And thanks for sending the questions in. That was nice.
Yes, it was.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. All right. Well, thank you, Ray.
Thank you. My pleasure.
See you next
Thank
time.
you, Blake. See you, people. Have fun. Be safe. Be careful.